It's going to look like this. It's hanging at the minute. It's absolutely hanging.
What if the parts inside a $2 million Bugatti are the same parts sitting inside a $40,000 Audi? One YouTuber just proved it on camera, and Bugatti has never fully recovered from the question. Picture this: a crashed hypercar worth $6 million, a manufacturer that refuses to sell a single bolt for it, and a British mechanic with a garage lift who just proved the entire industry has been lying about why. This is the Matt Armstrong and Bugatti saga. And the reason everyone is suddenly talking about it again is simple. YouTube itself, the platform, the algorithm, the audience, has thrown its full weight behind him. Millions of people have now watched one man take on a company worth billions, and Bugatti is losing. Act 1. The car nobody was supposed to save. In late 2025, a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, one of only about 60 ever built, was declared a total loss by an insurance company. It was smashed, airbags deployed, the front end crumpled, the horseshoe grille destroyed. It went to a salvage auction and it sold. Not to a collector, not to a museum. It sold to the orbit of a British YouTuber named Matt Armstrong, working on behalf of an American influencer named Alex Gonzalez, who owned the wreck. Armstrong is not new to this game. He built his channel rebuilding wrecked Audis, a Bentley Continental GT, an Aston Martin Vantage, a Maserati. He has over 6 million subscribers who tune in specifically to watch broken supercars come back to life. But nothing prepared his audience, or apparently Bugatti, for what happened when he flew to Miami to start pulling this Chiron apart. Here is the first twist. Bugatti did not say no immediately. They quoted a price: $1.7 million for a factory repair. Then, seemingly realizing that number was insane even for a millionaire's plaything, they dropped it. $600,000. The owner still said no, and that is when the real story began. Act 2. The Blacklist. Once Bugatti realized this car was not coming back to them for a factory repair, they made a decision that changed everything. They locked the VIN. In plain English, that means Bugatti flagged this exact car in their system so that no authorized dealership anywhere in the world would sell genuine parts for it. Not a headlight, not a control module, nothing. Think about what that actually means. You can own a $2 million hypercar outright, no loan, no lease, title in your name, and the manufacturer can still functionally strand it forever just by refusing to acknowledge it exists in their parts network. That is not a safety policy. That is a manufacturer using a monopoly on components to control what happens to a car after they've already been paid for it. This is where the story stopped being about one crashed car and became something much bigger. Because Armstrong did not quit. He said publicly that he would waive any warranty, take full legal responsibility, and still attempt the rebuild without a single official part if he had to. And that is exactly what he did. Act 3. Bugatti fights back, and mate Rimac gets personal. You would think a company as image-conscious as Bugatti would just ignore a YouTuber. Instead, the CEO himself, mate Rimac, stepped directly into the fight. He posted on social media explaining why independent repairs on a car this complex were dangerous, arguing the Chiron essentially needed to be split in half and rebuilt to factory tolerances that could never be replicated in a home garage. He said outright that Bugatti parts could not simply be 3D printed, and he pushed back on rumors about parts pricing circulating online, calling much of it simply not true. For a second, it looked like Bugatti had won the narrative. A billionaire founder personally explaining the physics and safety risk sounds pretty convincing. But here is the problem for Bugatti. Armstrong had already started proving, piece by piece, that a huge percentage of what makes these cars run is not exotic Bugatti wizardry at all. There's a detail in Rimac's response worth sitting with for a moment, because it reveals something about how modern hypercar brands actually think about their own customers. He didn't just say the repair was risky, he said the car needed to be split in half, essentially cut into 2 structural sections, and rebuilt inside the Molsheim factory using jigs and tooling that simply do not exist anywhere else on Earth. On paper, that sounds like an unanswerable argument. No garage, however well equipped, can replicate a factory built specifically to align a carbon monocoque to tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter. But Armstrong's response exposed the uncomfortable part of that argument. He didn't ask Bugatti to hand him factory tooling. He asked them to sell him the parts and let him accept the consequences of imperfection. Bugatti's refusal to even engage with that offer is what turned public opinion. If the company's real concern was safety, there was an obvious middle ground available. Sell the parts, require a signed liability waiver, and walk away. Instead, Bugatti chose total silence on the specific request, while continuing to talk publicly about safety in the abstract. That gap between what they said and what they were actually being asked to do is exactly where the internet's trust in the brand started to crack. Act 4. The parts bombshell that Bugatti never wanted made public. While the Chiron battle raged, Armstrong was quietly running a parallel experiment on a completely different car, a repossessed Bugatti Veyron he had bought and was fixing up on the side. And what he found in that garage might be the most damaging thing said about Bugatti's business model in years. He discovered that many of the parts inside a Bugatti are shared directly with ordinary Volkswagen Group vehicles. A roof mechanism pump identical to one used in an Audi A5, standard NGK spark plugs, filters made by the exact same third-party suppliers used in regular production cars. By simply cross-referencing part numbers, Armstrong sourced components for a fraction of dealer pricing. A service Bugatti had quoted at $25,000, he completed for around $1,600. An oil change process that supposedly justified a $20,000 bill turned out to be, in his words, less dark art and more a test of patience. This is the moment the story flipped from a repair drama into a full-blown controversy about pricing transparency. Because if a chunk of a $2 million hypercar is running on parts shared with a car that costs $40,000, what exactly are owners paying for when Bugatti quotes six figures for a service? Rimac's own statement, that a lot of the numbers circulating online were simply not true, suddenly reads very differently once you've watched Armstrong pull an Audi component out of a Veyron with his own hands on camera. Act 5. Why YouTube and the audience picked a side. Here is the part that makes this different from a normal car influencer story. This didn't stay a niche mechanic drama. It became one of the most talked about sagas in the entire car YouTube ecosystem, referenced in unrelated videos, dissected by outlets that normally cover Ferrari launches and Lamborghini reveals, and eventually pulled Armstrong onto a podcast to explain his side directly. Look at the actual numbers behind that shift for a second, because they explain why this became unavoidable content across the car YouTube space. Armstrong's main channel sits above 6 million subscribers, and individual updates on this Bugatti saga have pulled in audiences large enough that smaller car channels started reacting to his reactions, stacking a second and third layer of commentary on top of the original videos. Outlets that normally cover Bugatti's factory launches and new hypercar reveals were suddenly writing headlines about spark plugs and locked VIN numbers instead. That is not normal for a brand that spends enormous effort curating an image of untouchable exclusivity. On that podcast, Armstrong compared his dynamic with mate Rimac to a Messi versus Ronaldo rivalry. Two people who are personally fine with each other, but whose conflict the internet turned into something bigger than it really was. He even said he suspects someone else inside Bugatti's corporate structure overruled Rimac, because the tone of the company's position seemed to shift after their initial contact. Whether that is true or not, the comment section reaction told its own story. Public sentiment sided overwhelmingly with the mechanic, not the manufacturer. And this is the real headline hiding underneath the clickbait. YouTube backing Matt Armstrong doesn't mean some corporate policy change from the platform. It means the algorithm, powered entirely by what millions of viewers choose to click, watch, and share, has quietly declared which side of this fight the public trusts. Every recommended video, every trending push, every view is effectively a vote. And right now, those votes are stacking against Bugatti. Act 6. What Armstrong's message to Bugatti actually changes. So what did he actually send them? Not a legal threat, not a press release. Armstrong's message, repeated across his recent videos, is disarmingly simple. Let independent owners fix their own cars if they accept full responsibility and waive the warranty. That is it. That is the entire ask. It sounds reasonable because it is reasonable. Most industries already work this way. You can rebuild a wrecked airplane engine, a boat, even certain aftermarket firearms components, with the right expertise and the right waivers. Hypercars are the exception, Not because of some unique law, but because manufacturers like Bugatti have built an entire business model around controlling every single touch point of ownership after the sale. Parts, service, even the right to exist on the road after a crash. And here's the counter-argument that is worth taking seriously. Because Bugatti is not simply being greedy for the sake of it. A car making close to 1,600 horsepower, built around a carbon monocoque and a W16 engine, genuinely does carry more risk if reassembled incorrectly than your average family sedan. Rimac's point about liability is not fabricated corporate spin. If an independently repaired Bugatti fails on a public road and hurts someone, the headlines would be brutal for the brand, whether or not Bugatti had anything to do with the actual repair. That is a real, legitimate business risk, not just an excuse. But the counter to the counter argument is what has made this saga so sticky. Armstrong has already offered, on camera, repeatedly, to waive every single one of those liability protections in writing. He is not asking Bugatti to guarantee his work. He is asking them to simply step out of the way. And so far, the response has been silence or a locked VIN, rather than a signed release form. Act 7, where this actually leaves the industry. Zoom out and this stops being a story about one car influencer and one hypercar brand. Reports have also surfaced of other manufacturers, including Ferrari and Lamborghini, tightening their own stance around independent restores, and a Bugatti dealership in Miami is separately locked in a lawsuit against the parent brand over aggressive franchise demands. Put those threads together and you get a pattern. As hypercars increasingly resemble rolling computers wrapped in carbon fiber, manufacturers are quietly deciding that ownership does not mean control. It means a license, revocable the moment they decide your car is inconvenient to their brand image. That should worry anyone who has ever dreamed of owning something exotic one day. Because the real lesson of the Armstrong Bugatti saga isn't about spark plugs or fuel pump modules. It's about who actually owns a car once the money has changed hands. Is it the person whose name is on the title? Or is it the company whose logo is on the hood? Matt Armstrong got that Chiron running. He got the W16 to fire up without a single official Bugatti part crossing his workbench. That alone should have been impossible according to everything Bugatti said publicly. And yet there it was, idling in a normal garage, proof running through the exhaust pipes. So here's the real question this saga leaves behind. If Matt Armstrong can prove that a fortune in supposed engineering exclusivity is actually shared parts bins and inflated invoices, how many other manufacturers are running the exact same playbook? Bugatti built its empire on the idea that you are not just buying a car, you are buying access to a world only they control. Armstrong just showed millions of people the door out of that world. One fuse, one spark plug, one blacklisted VIN at a time. Whatever happens next with this Chiron and with Rimac, the audience has already delivered its verdict. Let us know in the comments. Should manufacturers be forced to sell parts to independent owners who accept the risk, or does Bugatti have a point about safety on machines this extreme? Subscribe for the next update on this rebuild, because this saga is nowhere near finished.